good night, good luck, a Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on this good earth.
I bought the lie they sold me. Thought everybody owed me. I'm taking everything I want. Still feeling incomplete. Problematic, post-traumatic, bad for number one. I fill myself with doubt again. It's supposed to be fun. As I wait for something better, but something never comes. Remember
All right, guys, we are on to episode 2 of season 2, overall episode 23, Phumblepodcast. I'm your host, Pej. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow me on YouTube, or anywhere you take in your podcasts. Today's guest is a special one. I've actually had one interaction with him previously through a mutual friend that introduced us. A very, very interesting man, to say the least. And we're going to talk about his life currently, and I'm going to ask him some questions about his past. And he also has a rocking band that we're going to get into as well. Jacob Desrochers, how you doing, man? Thanks for getting on.
Good. Good. How are you?
I'm well,
Good
man.
job on the name.
Yeah. I did it.
Good.
So yeah, thanks for getting on. I know you're busy, and I appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Of course.
First of all, you're 49 now, correct?
I turned 49 on the 11th, so next Wednesday I'll be officially 49.
49. All right. Cool, man. Well, happy
Yeah.
early birthday. And you don't
Thank
look
you.
49. You look 29. I'll be honest.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I fight it as hard as I can. So state
Cool,
of
man.
mind.
State of mind, exactly, right? It's all in the mind. So we wanted to talk about your current projects that you're involved in. One being overall about your health, right? You were talking about you're running again. You have a goal to get in shape.
Yep.
And I know from touring and being in music and being involved in recording like yourself, I know that focusing on our health sometimes is the last thing on our mind. So
Yes.
So you were talking about running and you're training for a race. Well, let's start there. What are you training for?
Well, it's not like a race per se. I just started training for a 5K. It's I like setting goals like that. I'm a competitive person by nature. I've ran before, and I just felt like if I set myself up and I sign up for something, I'll finish it. And then recently I was watching the Olympics and I remembered how much I love swimming, and I grew up in a pool. And so the next day I went up and did some laps at a gym up off of Folsom that has an Olympic sized pool. And I did about 30 or 40 laps without any problem. So then that night, given my nature of competition, I signed up to swim Donner Lake on the 14th, which is in a couple weeks. So now I'm running and swimming. Yeah. Because I'm a much stronger swimmer than I am a runner. I'm a big guy, and us big guys hit the ground a little harder when we're running, and I'm not lean. I I like to run because it's such a challenge, but swimming I can go a lot further and a lot quicker, being weightless and everything. And I've always been a strong swimmer, and I do have the lung capacity from singing, so that helps. And yeah, so I'm already up to like 80 laps, which is about 3 miles, and the lake is 2.7. So I should be okay, except for the I got to look out for the altitude and the water temperature. So I bought like a wetsuit thing, and I'm just gonna go for it.
Damn, bro, that's awesome. I mean, being able to just make your mind up to do that. And previous to that, when was the last time you got in the pool or in the lake to swim? Like
Probably about 20 or 30. Yeah, I've never even competed. I just grew up. We had a pool when I was growing up, and then in high school, I had the swim coach, my PE coach for when I was a senior.
Yeah.
And she had us swimming like 3 days a week and doing weights. And that's probably the best shape I was ever in my life when I was a senior in high school. And she taught me all the strokes, the breathing technique, even did some diving and stuff, because, you know, you might as well be out there. You're going to get something out of it. And I just remembered really liking it. And there's something meditative to swimming because it's such a rhythmic, like, breathing.
Yeah.
And I was always good at the breaststroke because it doesn't, you're underwater a little bit longer. You could take bigger breaths. So yeah, I just started doing it. And then I looked on YouTube and found how to make the stroke a little more efficient.
Nice.
And watched a couple videos and was watching the Olympics, watching them, how they swim. And so I went back the next day, and each day I'd kind of going in and trying to improve the actual stroke so that I can get across the lake quicker. And I don't know, I just wanted a challenge. I've always I watched like a Nike commercial where they're running through the woods or something in the rain, and I envy that. You know, I just want to be an athlete. I grew up an athlete, and yeah.
What did you other than swimming, what else did you participate in athletics in school?
Well, let's see. So growing up, I played soccer, I played baseball. I, like I said, did swimming. I was an avid skateboarder for a really long time. I played baseball for about 13 years. And then snowboarding kind of took over as well. When I was in high school, I eventually got sponsored by Burton Snowboards. And this is in like 89 and 90.
Wow.
And competed pretty well. And then when the sport started to sort of shift gears into more extreme snowboarding, like what they're doing now, to be an extreme athlete, I think you have to not be afraid of getting hurt because you're hurling your body. You know, there's that element to it. And it goes beyond just adrenaline. It goes into like just no fear. There's just a certain type of person that can do that sport. Like not everybody can do that. I was pretty good, but I would always look where I was going to land. I'm not flying off cliffs. I'm not just hurling, 10 backflips in a row. The guys that do that stuff, like in the Olympics now, it's just amazing to me. It's like the big wave surfers that do those 50, 100-foot waves. Forget it. I love the ocean and I love the water, but that's just just the people that do that have this other hinge, that I just never had. So yeah, but I got pretty good. And I still ride every year. I go up maybe 10 or 12 times. Me and my fiance both snowboard. And once I got older, I grew in size, and I just wanted to feel like an athlete again. So I started lifting, walking, doing kind of more basic stuff. And in more recent years, just really wanting to up the ante and compete, feel that rush of something about competition pushes the human condition. And I just want to feel that again, and having some kind of success.
That's cool, man. I completely can relate to the competitive nature. I mean, I wrestled in high school. My passion in sports has always been basketball, but coming from Iran, I didn't have the confidence when I was in my high school, and our high school was like top 5 in that sport.
Yeah.
So, all the players.
What sport? In basketball?
Yeah. That was my passion
okay.
ever since I learned about the game. I mean, I always loved it. I didn't know I'd love it to the level that I did. Um, Later on after high school, I mean, after high school, I actually started playing leagues and stuff, but I do it now for fun, right? Because I actually enjoy it, and it's just so freeing. And there's something about healthy competition, and that's just people who compete and compete for that high, right? You get that. There's like a emotion involved with it that I'm sure you can relate to, that is just unmatched for me, and basketball gives me that the most. It looks like swimming and baseball and X Games did that for you. um
Yeah.
so it's, I really uh I've mentioned to you before, I mean, I don't do any drugs or I don't drink or do anything like that so
Yeah.
my high comes from, playing basketball. I wrestled in high school. I enjoy watching MMA. I wouldn't do it
Yeah.
now, although I'd love to train at it. I wouldn't compete in MMA, just because my wife will leave me after a few
Yeah.
punches.
Fair enough.
but uh
Fair enough.
but
Yeah.
but it's I think basketball just, I can still do it at 35, and I think I can do it at 45 and 55. I feel like
Yeah.
I can still play it.
Yeah. I like basketball too. It's my favorite sport to watch
To watch.
on
Yeah.
TV. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I played up until high school, but in high school I was short. Like I
Yeah.
grew a lot when I was a junior.
Yeah.
And by then I was into the skateboarding and snowboarding thing. And those two worlds were sort of separate.
Yeah.
Um, the, the high school sports and, skateboarding and snowboarding were the rebellious, kind of punk rock sort of sports. So they didn't merge. And again, basketball is one of those sports that once you hit that certain age, it takes off. It goes to another level. Once
Yeah.
you hit
Yeah.
17, 18, the natural players just grow 6 inches and they just start dunking on you. And you're like, okay, well,
Yeah.
good luck.
It's
But I,
yeah.
I, I, I love the sport.
It's a great sport. Yeah. I enjoy watching baseball, kind of like uh and the X Games. I'm horrible at any of the X Games, and my wife loves skiing and all that, and I've started
Mhm.
recently to take that up. And my first attempt, I dislocated my thumb, which was great, but it's part of it,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
um that's cool, man. Though I think we share a few commonalities and love for sports in general, and then music, obviously. And then it's interesting you said basketball and punk rock.
Yeah.
I was in a touring rock band, and I love
Yeah.
basketball, right? So it was
Yeah.
like it to the naked eye that didn't really mesh, but
Sure.
for me it was like, for me that was a challenge, right? To me it was like, all right, well, I'm a Persian boy that sings rock. That already doesn't mesh. The only other person who's done the only other person who's done that was Freddie Mercury, right? And then he
Sure.
kicked ass
Sure.
at it. So I was like, why not me, right? And so in
Yeah.
my 20s, that's what I did. But I'm
Nice.
curious to know,
In
how did
Iran?
you? No. In my 20s was
Oh,
here. I moved from Iran when I was
okay.
8. I left Iran when I was eight
Oh,
years
okay.
old. Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, uh, and I haven't been back since. So it's been 26 years, roughly, that I haven't been back.
Yeah.
Um, I plan to go eventually, and my wife has never been. She was born in Tennessee. She's
Okay.
Persian background, but she was born here in America. But so down the road we'll see. But I'm curious about, when did you discover your passion for music, and when did you start actually, what was your first instrument? What really turned you on to music and then
Oh,
rock?
yeah. Okay. Well, let's see. There was a guitar in the closet growing up, and it looked cool, and it sat there for many, many years. And I'd pull it out and just kind of check it out. Neither one of my parents are very musical. My mom was a watercolor artist, so she was always very supportive of anything sort of creative. I didn't really like music um, until I heard hip hop, like Run DMC it just blew me away. Like I grew up in Grass Valley, up in the sticks, you know, up in the mountains, and anything
Yeah.
urban I was just fascinated with, whether it was breakdancing, you know, hip hop, just that culture, that street culture was so just fascinating to me. And I was just all about any of it. I'd watch all those movies over and over and over again. And when I heard Run DMC, it was real stripped down, and you could sing along, and they rocked the Adidas. Their style was clean. It was all black with the fedoras, and something about the fashion, the music, and everything just all kind of just hit me. And I was just all about Run DMC. And then that kind of graduated me into the Beastie Boys. Then I got into high school, and like I said, started skateboarding, and all the skateboarders listened to punk. And I listened to punk, and I was like, this sounds like shit. You know, it's just aggressive. They're screaming. I didn't get it. My oldest sister was a punk rocker. I just didn't get it.
Yeah.
And toward my end of my freshman year, there was a band called 7 Seconds. They're actually from Sacramento, coincidentally.
Wow.
And they started doing this sort of, was, you know, straight. They put out this album called New Wind, and it was very less punk. It was very much more slowed down, more mid-tempo with melodies. And that just clued me into this whole other side of punk. They're like melodic punk rock. So graduating from that kind of a sound, you would hear like Green Day or Blink 182, like very catchy, more, they call it pop punk. But back then, you know, 7 Seconds, straight edge, they had a message.
Yeah.
And it was about making yourself better, life better through music. And it wasn't so nihilistic and aggressive and just brutal as some of the punk rock that I had heard coming out of England. I mean, I grew up in the Reagan era, so everything was all about nuclear war, impending doom. And, you know, everybody was anti-establishment, very anti-government.
Yeah.
A lot like now, but with everybody just had way less, more of a willingness to stand up and organize a show or a boycott or something than just post stuff on Facebook or point the finger. And it wasn't so extreme. It was more like live and let live sort of a thing. You know, everybody had their thing. In the 80s, there were still the same problems, but people just kind of stayed in their own lane a little bit more. And if you had a different opinion, it didn't mean you were a horrible person, basically.
Yeah.
So it's just, we're so separated by space, but also so connected by our phones that opinion can really soil. You've never even met this person and you hate their guts. You don't even know that they like tacos like you do. You don't even know, you know, if, you know, I mean, it's like, you don't even know what nationality they really are, what country. I mean, you said you're Persian, and that for some people that can mean like the whole third of the world. You know, they don't know specifically what country. And if they hate that for whatever reason, or like Americans, like people hate Americans. Well, there's a lot of different types of Americans. I mean, we have a whole like laundry list of Americans and what falls under that, and patriotism. And I don't know, it's just so mixed up right now, but I don't want to go like in a deep dive into politics. But growing up there, music, I was never much into politics, but this message, this positivity of 7 Seconds really attracted me to it. And then right around the same time, my friend took some guitar lessons and was playing like acoustic guitar, like folk guitar.
Yeah.
And so we kind of figured if we just sped it up, it would be punk rock, right? So we just played open chords and just, instead of like power chords, and we just strummed open chords. He knew like the basics, A, E, you know, G and F. And we just strung them together and wrote these songs. And our band was called Just Us. And like instead of justice, but just
I get
us.
it. Yeah. I was going to say
it had a P symbol on the top of the P symbol. The top of it turned into a mushroom cloud. So it was very political. And our friend's dog, Buzz, was at the center of it, because he had this Australian Shepherd, and we would skate and play music out in our friend's garage, out in their garage. And their dad was cool, and I think he was a drummer, and there were some old drums laying out there, so he drummed. Pat played guitar, and then he's like, well, you play bass. And so I picked up some old bass, I don't even remember where,
Yeah.
And I just learned how to play on one string with one finger and just moved it up and down. And
Yeah.
he would show me the dots,
Right.
like
Yeah.
third dot to fifth dot to sixth dot. And I used to get blisters on my finger. Anyway, once we got into high school, he met other actual musicians, and they kicked me out of the band. They changed the name, and they wanted to do something more musical. And they're like, well, you don't even know how to tune your bass. Well, that made me upset. And being competitive from sports, I figured, well, I'll show them. So I started another band. I figured out how to play, and that grew into the passion. And right then I decided, well, if I write the songs, then they can never kick me out. So I was playing bass, but I would write on guitar and then switch back to bass and just show everybody the parts.
Yeah.
Now, and then I just had a kind of grew up a knack for that. So I was playing bass in this band in all through high school. And then once we got out of high school, I was in this other band that they'd kind of hired me, these two guys, and it was more like a glam rock / they were trying to do punk. This was the early 90s. They thought it would, grunge and punk were ending. So they were these butt rocker guys with long hair that cut their hair and were trying to be punk. So let's hire this guy to be a punk bass player. And I moved to Berkeley, and they paid for my apartment. I soon found out that these guys were not legit. They had no credibility in the punk scene. They didn't know what it came from. You can't just like play punk rock. You got to be punk rock. You got to understand the culture, and it's very uncool to try to change to that. It's something that it's really well respected. It's a fraternity. It's sort of it's like MMA. Just because I don't know. It's like any sports. It takes a while to work your way up and to that, to be accepted by the team.
You gotta pay your dues. Yeah.
Pay your dues. Exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, I called my friend and begged him to play drums because we were looking for a drummer, and he got in. And so we shared the room, and we would practice these weird songs with these guys. And when they'd leave, there was a stereo that had a cassette player with two mic outputs, like that cheesy, like an old stereo cassette.
Yeah.
And you could hit record, and you had two lines, left and right. So one I would duct tape to my microphone, so that was my vocal line, and then the other one I'd put in the room, and I'd play guitar, and Jason would play drums. And so we'd make these blank tapes. And meanwhile, unbeknownst to the other guys, one time I recorded the practice, what we did with them. And then when they left the room, we would kind of hang around and record. And it wasn't even our tape deck. It was the band we like shared the room with or something. Yeah. There were some gothic band called Switchblade Symphony. And I don't know, I'd always borrow their guitar and break their string. They probably hated us. We were the worst roommates. But anyway, if you're out there, Switchblade Symphony, I'm sorry, I owe you a couple packs of strings. But we had to do it, and anyway, so we made this tape. Side A was this band we were in, and then side B was me and Jason. And we were driving home to Grass Valley from Berkeley. And at the time, we were big, potheads. So we were going to smoke some weed and then listen to both sides and figure out what to do. And it was pretty apparent what we should be doing. And Jason heard the song. He's like, dude, you're not a bass player. You're a songwriter. I'm like, dude, I can barely play guitar. He's like, songwriting is different. It's simple. It's like 3 chords. His stepdad was a drummer. And then his stepfather was this guy, Jonathan Richman, who was in that movie, Something About Mary. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
You seen that?
Yeah.
The guy in the tree that sings guitar and it's kind of narrates throughout the movie.
Yeah.
That's his stepdad.
No way. Wow. Cool.
Yeah. So it's just ironically, but Jonathan was a singer-songwriter that came from the East Coast and kind of a folk, kind of punk kind of guy. And he's like, he grew up with Jonathan. He's like, Jonathan's songs are like 2 chords, dude, and just some cool lyrics. Like, you got that. He's all, just focus on writing songs. What we're doing is much cooler than what we're doing with these other yokels. Let's just do that. So we moved off and we called it the Lonely Kings. I thought we could do some rockabilly kind of thing and slick our hair like greasers, but I didn't know how to play. Just doing punk because that's what I knew how to play, kind of, from my history. And Kurt Cobain, as simple of a guitar player he was, there was a nuance to his power chords. There was a like a beautiful noise, even using feedback for sounds and guitar effects and things, and using music in a different way, kind of like almost like Jimi Hendrix, where the notes would bend into shape. And I love that sort of anti-music part of it.
Yeah.
So I just decided to make the guitar sound the way I wanted to,
Yeah.
and made up my own chords, which exist, but I just didn't know what they were called. They're
Right.
just jazz chords, basically.
Yeah.
And so I played punk rock with like weird jazz chords, and it created this sort of sound. And yeah, and then we went on and were together for 8 years, and eventually got a record deal with a company out of Orange County, and toured nationally, and ended up going overseas a few times and putting out 3 albums. And Lonely Kings was a band. I mean, we've never really like disbanded. The last show we played was a couple years ago in Reno with Puddle of Mud.
Oh, no
But
way.
we were
Wow.
banned for about 23 years. Yeah, actively.
Wow. That's
Even
awesome, man.
after our fame had sort of had peaked, we all stayed together,
Yeah.
because that's all we knew. My father had passed. My drummer's mom died of cancer. This dysfunctional most.
All right. So we had a slight glitch. We're back on. We're still recording. Okay. So the last thing we discussed was you were mentioning you guys were touring for 23 years.
Well, we toured for the last like 10 of it. I mean, we kind of got together. We got signed after 8 years. So yeah, maybe half and half. We were just a local band for the first half.
That's cool though, man. That's so this is what, so 23 years, but you guys started when you were in high school, you told me, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
well, kind of, yeah, maybe about 4 or 5 years out of high school. Yeah.
4 or 5. Okay. Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
about the same time frame as when I started with Prima, which was my old band, which was the now our genre. We kind of covered a bigger umbrella of rock. Like we didn't just stick to one. We were more of a cover band initially.
Cool.
We started to write our originals, and then it was 5 of us. And my favorite part about the band, and we're still all friends, we all just got married and and
Yeah.
kind of, and that was it, that was that. But my favorite part of this group that we had, Prima, was the fact that we represented 5 parts of the world in one band, and we were a rock band, which was kind of like it on paper it didn't make sense, right? But when you saw us perform and then you heard what we presented, you would have had a different experience.
That's
And
cool.
we didn't tour as long as you guys did, however, but we kind of made a name for ourselves in like from 2008 to 2010. And Black drummer Sam, he's going to be on this podcast in the next week or two. Western country boy in our rhythm guitarist and singer, his name was Tyler. Bass player was Mexican. Our lead guitarist was half Japanese, half Irish, and I was your Persian lead singer. So, and I was
Nice.
on the keyboards. But it was just, yeah,
That's cool.
and we threw it together, out of college. I was going to Sac City, and then I met up with Sean, our lead guitarist, and then I got Sam, he was my neighbor, our drummer, and then we found Eddie at a party, and he by the way, bass players that are committed are like, a needle in the haystack, right? You would,
Yes.
so it's like, but he was the most committed, man. And he was at every practice on time. He was ready to go, and he developed immensely during that time, and he still plays, but he got into medical, and I believe he got into physician assistant, I believe is what he does now. But anyway, we're all adulting now, but it was just cool to hear your story, and then the parallels in 2 different decades, where we started. But I for me, and I want to touch on this because we talked about this a little bit when we met initially. the anxiety, right? Dealing with anxiety of these big moves, right? It at the 10, I was like 23 when 24 where we kind of took a break. That was but we had agents at our battles of we had some battles, battle of bands, and then we practiced religiously for those. And you know, that was the fun part, just getting ready for that, right? But it got to a point for me when it came to performing at that age, um, where we're actually having, you know, minor success and it's starting to build. But what ended up happening is I'm, you know, City Slickers in Folsom. We were performing there. They hired us to be the house band, so we would go there twice a month, 3 times a month. And you know, this was a big deal considering we were 5 random guys that got together and we created this thing. But
Yeah.
but what started happening and was, even though I was having this success, I was not like excited. And it was puzzling to me at that young age, being 22,
Sure.
23, because
Yeah.
I was like, why the fuck am I not excited? I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
I'm this is all I loved ever since I could speak. You know, music. At my first experience with music was singing at the age of 3, which I still remember. Like I was
Yeah.
singing in the back of my parents' car, and it was just so liberating and free. But the minute the business side kicked in, like I don't know. I would perform, and I would, you know, I'd like to say I did all right on the performances, and then on my drive home, I'm in tears, like I'm straight up crying, like going home, you know. And I'm like, why am I doing, you know? Now I understand what was happening to me, you know, almost 17 years later, but or 15 years later. But it's just, it was I wanted to know your take. Like when you guys got the opportunities, the tours, and then you started to get recognized, and those steps started happening for you. Did you deal with any of that anxiety? And I know that you had your demons with alcohol um and your share of narcotics. I just like to know what happened to you to go even heavier into the drugs. Was it the anxiety, or was it the pressure, or was it none of those things? I'm just curious.
Well, that's a great question. So I had always, you know, growing up in Grass Valley, it's a very well known sort of well, a lot of people grow pot up there. Okay, so
Yeah.
the culture is very desensitized to marijuana. And now this is also 95, 96 when the Chronic is out, Cypress Hill.
Yeah.
I mean, weed was just like this thing. I don't really put it in a category of heavy duty narcotics or consider it a gateway. I don't smoke anymore because I like feeling my feelings, and marijuana now would probably just make me feel more than I even want to. It just
Yeah.
accelerated everything. But at the time, it was cool because it opened up this floodgate of creativity, or what I thought. Um, and so we just did that, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I could just hyper focus on the music, and it just was very pure and just very easy, and had some beers at practice and after the shows, and whatever. I never really saw it as a coping mechanism. Now, when we did get signed, I was always just really competitive, and I knew we had something special. I wasn't going to stop until someone validated that.
Yeah.
And when we got signed, then the pressure hit.
Yeah.
And then we get in the studio, and we have this producer, and he's like, "What do you guys just smoke pot and put these pieces together, and that's your song?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah." He's all, "There's no verse, no chorus, no
Yeah.
bridge, no structure." And I'm like, "No." And our drummer couldn't play to a click. So we got our asses handed to us on the first album, even though we had gotten signed it and come up with some pretty cool stuff. And then we wrote all these fast songs, and the label just said, no, we like your slower, more mid-tempo stuff, and it's catchier and it's better, and that's why we signed you, and we're not going to put any of these out. So I was like, okay.
I wanted to actually tie what we started this whole podcast on, which was healthy competition, and then the pressure on, that you guys faced from the label saying this is shit, we want what we signed you for. And I was asking you, like, what was your initial reaction to that? How did you guys deal with that, and what was the outcome?
Well, okay, so it started to build, and I took all that on myself. I just doubled down. Instead of relaxing and relying on my bandmates, I just pushed harder. I just took over control of the artwork, how we looked, how we dressed, how we sounded, everything. And I used to get real scared. I mean, the pressure that was on me and the pressure was getting put on me by the label really freaked me out. I'd kind of write about it in third person. It's funny because the first song on our first CD was called Runaway to Spain. And it's sort of this fantasy about me, because I heard Spain was really cool, you know, just a rad place to like live and be. It's beachy and people eat tacos and take naps. And well, I had a friend who was a pro skater. He's like, dude, Spain's the best place in the world, just hands down. The women are beautiful. It's just amazing. It's that, you know, the Mediterranean. And so I wrote this song called Runaway to Spain. And it was just me sort of like, you know, if this doesn't work, I'll just take off. I'll just turn into Hemingway. I'll just go live in a weird beach house and eat beans and rice and write and you know, drink cheap wine. And I don't know, I just had this sort of Kerouac sort of way of just escapism. If all else fails, you know, screw being a rock star, I'll just take off and no one will ever hear from me ever again. So that was how I alleviated the pressure, was in this sort of fantasy world. Then you know, things started going well, and then the pressure that I put on myself, I would apply to other people. I had a day job. You know, my kids' mom got pregnant with my oldest son. Pressure became more. The band had to work. And like, kind of like you said, once the business entered it, there's facts and there's feelings. And now there's a lot of facts in music business that are not fun. Okay. There's a lot of feelings in music when you're writing. That's all anybody wants to talk about are feelings. But then there's facts. So you got to be able to shift gears between those. A lot of feeling people are not good fact people. And the industry knows this, and they have very good fact people. They're going to try to hose you every chance you get. They know you want to play. They know you can play, and they'll just feed you the scraps of whatever. Now, we didn't get screwed in business, but we just kept writing and writing and writing, trying to appease everybody. Rather than focus on our core sound, I just started writing around what I thought everybody wanted to hear. Or we'd go play with these amazing bands. I'm like, I want to be like this. And then they were getting all this critical success. I was always looking at other people's success instead of the small successes on our own and building off that. Then getting out on tour, that sort of escapism, not caring, you know, booze made me not care. It turned off all my care buttons. I'm like, this works. I'm out every night. There's beer at every show. And I just started flipping that switch off. And then, you know, we kept touring, and then, you know, toward the end of the touring stuff, the booze got stronger. You know, if I could get my hands on some other drugs, I mean, nothing like, I don't know. I none like heroin or anything like that, but Coke or something like that would just push the drinking further, and you just sit around and talk about how rad you used to be. And that didn't come in till later. So toward the tail end of my music career, I started doing hair, and then I was able to make money. I worked in a high-end salon. I worked really hard. I was in school and I was touring. I was living in my friend's garage. Me and my kids' mom had split up due to all the rock and roll fuckery. I mean, there was drugs, alcohol, women, anything I could get to fill like this massive void inside of myself. And I'm not saying this to brag. I mean, there are some experiences I've had that I'll take to the grave, and they were amazing, and they were a rock star, and that was great. But 95% of it, maybe even 99, I could have lived without. It was just me being sad, you know, trying to get at someone that it was also sad, low self-esteemers. I mean, not to be like crass, but like, I've slept with people I wouldn't even want to be seen standing next to on the street. You just wake up and be like, what the hell is this? And that has nothing to do with sex or lust or love. that just has to do with making yourself temporarily feel better. And then in the morning, you feel like a big old, piece of garbage. And then that just starts, catapulting. Snowballing. So that got bigger and bigger and bigger. Then when I started making money as a hairdresser, now I have money. Right. So now I'm going to the bar and I have a couple $100 in my pocket. So, and these habits, what became once in a while started becoming, a little more often. And then every time we drank, we would get some blow and then just, again, commiserate about that. We were still in a band and the shows were always a great excuse to kind of get together and party. And that's because that's, like I said, that's all we had. And then it all just kind of, and then I started DJing. I love electronic music. It got me a chance to be out there, but I would get drunk and get high while I was performing, basically. Like, there's no way I'm going to do this job sober. Like, what's wrong with you? And then it all just kind of came to a head and I was just really unhappy. And I'd have these emotional, not just regular hangovers, but emotional hangovers where I just felt like a giant piece of shit and I couldn't come around from it. And then one night, it just happened. I just took off. I was at a bar. I was drinking. I was doing some blow. I was also at that point, strung out on opiates because I use those for like hangovers. They worked great for hangovers, for Coke and booze hangovers. I don't recommend that. Any of you listeners out there that are looking a way to take the edge off, do not. It just, that is a slippery slope and it just gets more and more and more. And people have ruined their lives, death, It's just nasty. Just deal with your hangover. If you want to party like a rock star, fine, but deal with it like a rock star on Saturday morning. Don't be a pussy. Just fucking handle it. Drink some water and take a nap or whatever. Just don't. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you got to own that. You got to own that. If you're gonna rip it, it's gonna suck the next day. Like good and bad, yin and yang, black and white. Good and evil. It's just the world is a very balanced place, and if you try to fuck with it, it'll throw you into the ground. Just to remind you that no one rides for free. Anyhow, it all came to a head. I had this giant panic attack while I was using, and I could not stop it. Now, I don't know if you've ever had an argument with a loved one when you've had some drinks, and it's hard to turn that emotion off. You start saying shit you don't mean. I mean, it's hard enough to do it sober, let alone when your inhibitions have down. You have this great big giant emotional fight, argument, whatever, and you don't remember half of it. You said all this awful stuff. Like, that was happening on the inside. So my rock bottom kind of happened in a mirror, and I couldn't shut the feelings off. And I just remember looking in the mirror and saying, like, never again. And I'd love to tell you that was the very last time I ever used, because I had to test it a couple more weekends after that and be like, maybe it was just, maybe I didn't drink enough, or maybe I didn't do enough Coke, or maybe I didn't. But every time I picked up, it was just within 20 minutes, it would start, like, my heart rate would start going. And the last thing I kind of remember was showing a friend of mine. It was like 5 a.m. We'd been up all night, and I was showing this guy pictures of my kids on my phone, which I never brought out, because I was a weekend dad. I was separated. I never partied when my kids were there, anything like that. I didn't use around them. I never even had it in the house or any of that stuff. It was my two worlds were separate. I was like two different people. And I was showing him pictures of my kids saying, like, this is real. You're not real. None of this is real. This is the only thing that's real. And he's like, okay, well, I'm just going to go. You're starting to get out there. And I just, all I remember is this definition between reality and fantasy, and what I was using to check out was now rearing its ugly head and forcing me to check back in. And I didn't like that. And I got really scared. And what I was afraid of wasn't quitting, wasn't not even have fun again. It was not being able to put my head in the sand and not deal with shit, postponing the inevitable, coping with life's bullshit. I'd been through a divorce. My dad had died. I had 2 fucking kids. My band was fucking on the rocks. I pissed away my career calling my manager in a drunken, coked out stupor, and fired him on the phone on a fucking message machine that he could play back 1,000,000 times and play back for me. Just stupid shit. And all I looked back on was all this self-sabotage I'd done along my whole career. As soon as I got close to success, I would do something huge to bring it back down to where I could manage it. So you can only get as far as you get. And maybe that's kind of what happened with you. I could relate to that. As soon as you get up there, you gotta, that's why it's not fun, because now you're meeting your own expectations. When the world's your oyster, there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, then let's ride. But when they show it to you, you're like, wait. I don't know if I deserve that. I'm pretty good, but I'm not Freddie Mercury. Right. You know, shit. He was amazing.
Yeah.
But you know, you got to push through that shit.
Yeah.
You know, our perspective.
That was 100%. You hit that on the head. And when you mentioned feelings versus facts, like I've never heard any other musician term it that way, you know, put it in those terms. And that was just, it's dead on. You're right. I mean, musicians are feelers, like that's, and you can't, I mean, it's hard to separate the two, right? I mean, you can write music. I mean, I've written music as an assignment for school, and it was like a completely different experience than writing music because I want to write music. You know what I mean? So, but when you put your feelings into your baby, whatever you're creating, then you build expectations, and then those expectations become, they can become monsters, because then you're like, no, this is where I want it to go. What's going on? Why am I, you know,
now I'm going to fail times 10.
Yeah.
You know, it's one thing if you botch a show you don't care about, but when you botch an audition, when you botch, you know, that's where the real pressure is. And, you know, the people that can push through that, you know, it's something else. I like, as I've gotten older, I like that pressure, because you feel like you're in your body. It puts you right in the moment. And you know this from performing. Once you open your mouth, dude, it's on. You're not going to, oh, you know what? I'm going to go eat a piece of pizza and watch TV. You guys good? Because
no,
I just, you know, once you open your mouth, you're committed to the rest of that set.
And
I love that. I love that pressure. What I don't like is meeting my expectations, which are impossible, and meeting other people's expectations, you know? And that's, it's tricky, you know, but I mean, people that think music isn't competitive, when you're on stage, you know, you're a product, and you gotta get up there. You gotta show them that you know what you're doing, and be all confident, and it's crazy, and you're this pro athlete basically. And then when you walk off stage, you better drop that shit. You know what I mean?
That's the part.
You better be humble. You better be cool. You better be like, you know, you can't act the way you were on stage. Everybody wants to see it up there, but anywhere else in the world, you're just some narcissistic fool. And it's like, it's hard to shift gears. Once you believe that you're the person on stage in real life, you're dead in the water. You become a caricature of yourself, and it just gets, you're silly, you know?
It's two things. Sorry to interrupt you, because I want to make this point. There are two things that I've learned, and I'm still, obviously, every day I wake up saying I don't know shit, and bring it on, right? Like I don't because if the minute I think I know something, that's when I start, you know, getting upset, and I start questioning like what the hell's going on. But anyway, what I was going to say is two things, and one of them my therapist eloquated perfectly. One is don't have expectations, and don't forget why I did this to begin with, right? It was when I forgot that, you know, during the times where we started to have success, I started to forget that. And that's when it was the scariest, because then I'm like, I'm like in a shark infested water. What am I doing here? Right? Like that's how it felt, because I was still too young and too much of a rookie to look at it as, listen, this is what you love. Now you're just sharing what you love with more people. That's all I had to do. I couldn't get to that point. I couldn't get to that point. Now I see it. The other thing is, like you said, because when we turn that switch on, the performance switch on, turning it off to do the regular life, right, is like it's such a huge challenge. And my therapist said it, right, because you know, I don't have no secrets on here. We started seeing a couples counselor. You know, we're almost 6 years in, August 29th into our marriage. And you know, I started seeing my own therapist, and my therapist told me this. He said, I told him, I'm like, I told him all my issues that I thought I'm having, right? And then he goes, have you ever thought that you don't know how to deal with mediocrity? And then
Yeah.
when he pointed that out, I was like, say no more. Like that's it. That's what it is.
Sure.
And it was just turning that switch off from a performer, especially because I screwed up, or I felt that I screwed up our chances initially with that band, which
Sure.
in hindsight, it wasn't that, right? It was just we grew apart and we, you know, had other goals in life. But
Yeah.
I put that pressure on myself as the leader. I was the oldest in the band, and I thought I got to carry everything. And I had no
Sure.
experience with any of that. So anyway, it took me 12, 13 years to realize it's okay. And also, the reason I was so involved in competition in sports and everything else, it was all related, right? It all made sense to me because I was trying to perform, whether it's on the
Yeah.
basketball court, whether it was in the gym, whether
Yeah.
it's being married, right? Like it's even that, like just my
Yeah.
wife, my wife didn't care for all that. She just wanted a husband, right? That she loved
Sure.
initially. And and now I'm learning to be okay when things aren't, you know, on like level 10 all the time. So
Yeah.
um
No, I get it. My one of my buddies, AA buddies, said, you got to be the hole in the donut, dude. You got to be okay with that.
yeah,
He had a term for me, which I think he's probably used before. He called it terminally unique. He's like, yeah, I know guys like you know, you
yeah,
think you're special. And I'm like, yeah, you know,
yeah,
when I have
dude.
this, my I don't know shit speech is you're not special speech. Okay, so I am. Okay, God loves us all, or
Yeah,
whoever's in charge up there. We're all special.
yeah,
Okay, but
yeah,
I'm not special to the world's crap that it dishes out. I still got to lift the toilet seat. I still got to put the shopping cart back in the little spot that says, please return the carts here. I
right.
still have to do that stuff. I'm not above that.
No,
And that's where my flaws kick in, is when I feel like I'm different. And going to work the next day after a big show, you're right. It felt beneath me back then. You know, like
yeah,
I'm this, you know, creator of music, and how dare
yeah.
you know, drag me down. Yeah, I get it, man. But
It's
you
just
know,
our
it's
it was just our gift that you know
yeah,
we were blessed with.
sure.
And you know, it was just, I think, I mean, we're both in agreement here that when we say that, you know, it's a gift that we share and it has to come from love, right? And when it came from something else, it's always the slippery slope. So
Yeah. Well,
that's
and when you stick your neck out there, someone's going to lop it off. People don't realize that. Like, whatever, rock star. Well, you want the job? You want to get
yeah.
up there and open your mouth? Because one person's going to think it's awesome, and the other person's going to think I'm the, you know, is going to, and they're going to tell me how they feel. And
Yeah.
I'm not even going to ask them. They're going to share their opinions with me. And I don't even care. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
that's part of that anxiety, is that I'm opening myself up to criticism and failure for no other reason, and I'm not even getting paid for it. It's not even like painting a fence where the people are like, oh, the good job painting the fence, or hey, it's a little too white, can you do it, you know, a
yeah,
little more beige? Sure, you know, I'll get some more paint. Music, it's so subjective that, I mean, who knows? I mean, I hear bands all the time like, people really like this? You
yeah,
got to be kidding me.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Or like I was watching Lollapalooza, and there's some, you know, some artists out there just playing the tracks and just kind of mumbling their lyrics, and the CD's playing and the lyrics are there, but they're like, yo, and then like, and then the rest of the verse is going. They're not even like singing in the mic. They're just like
yeah,
chanting along to their own song that they recorded. And I'm like, that's not even playing an instrument in front of people. Like, but you know, whatever, they recorded it, and there's thousands and thousands of people. So what the hell do I know? Everybody's rocking out. Like, who gives a shit? But
that's true.
you
Yeah,
know, it's just one of those things. But yeah, man, no, I think, you know, you opened up a layer of this that I hadn't even really thought of in a long time, because it's so automatic, and it's so like, yeah, I'm in a band, I got this, it's cool. Like, no one ever talks about that underbelly, that fear, that insecurity. And that's all where all the good music comes from. No one
yeah,
wants to hear about how rad you think you are. They
yeah,
want to hear about how you, what creep, you know, things you'd never say out loud at dinner, you know. But
yeah,
everybody's going through it. They're all going through it, but no one would talk about it. That's what you got to write about,
yeah.
you know.
It's
And I
true,
had
man.
a producer one time, you know, I was talking to being real wordy in the lyrics and getting all weird and getting out there. And he's like, man, what's the song about? And I told him, he's like, why are your explanations so much better than your lyrics? Like, just say that,
Oh,
you
wow.
know? He's like, I had this thing. I'm all, dude, I'm just not the man I used to be. That's all there is to it. He's all, that's the hook. That's it. I relate to that,
Yeah.
write that. And that
You-
became the tag of the song, and I
You
was just like,
you were
man,
overcomplicating it by trying
yeah.
to be
Well,
a
I didn't want
lyricist.
people to know the truth, Besh.
That's
I
it.
didn't want people
Yeah.
to know. I didn't want
Yeah.
them to poke around inside my weird brain of failure and insecurity. I wanted them to think that I had it dialed. If you dig around, and you can pull some parallels of what I was saying,
Yeah.
and it was pretty artistic and stuff, but the truth of the matter was, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm making it all up, and I hope you like it, so here it is. It's like,
But that's so liberating, right? Not when you got
Yeah.
to when you get to that discovery about yourself, or when you start to let go of the shackles or the whale or the veils that you put on yourself.
Yeah.
It's hiding. We try to hide, right? And there's nothing more beautiful than the truth, like your truth, my truth, right? And I think, again, it comes from insecurities, anxiety, the whole, all of that. We try to, or even ourselves, we hide it from ourselves.
Yeah.
It's not wanting to admit what's really the problem. But the reality is, we're a couple musicians talking about this, right? There are doctors who deal with this shit.
Yeah.
There's I mean, look at the long list of veterans that are, have dealt with it as a result or previously.
Yeah.
All types of fields have to deal with this. We're lucky enough we can write about it and share it, like it's
Yeah.
it's
An outlet.
so anyway, it's a beautiful field that we're lucky enough to be a part of. And it's just the approach and the purpose behind it is really what keeps us going, versus making us fight ourselves. You
For
mentioned,
sure.
let's close on this. You mentioned hair salon, and I know you're involved in that. How long have you been, when did you discover that, and how long have you been cutting hair?
I've been cutting hair for about 20 years. Dude, it came back when I was a kid. I just hated the way my mom's lady cut my hair, and I wanted to look like Billy Idol or, the psychedelic furs, not like, a normal person. It was part of my identity. It was part of my outfit. Fashion to me isn't about making a statement. It's about defining who you are. It's about drawing a line in the sand to separate yourself from people, or to assimilate with other people. It's whatever you want it to be. If you want to look normal, dress normal. The weirdest people are the most normal. Like, the real psychos are the ones you don't see. Like, you know what I mean? They never shake me down at the airport. Why would they send Captain Obvious in to hijack a plane? Obviously, this, you know what I'm saying? Like, we get our kicks, like it's the weird normal person that or quote unquote normal. No one's normal. So fashion for me was just always a way to express who I was. I grew up in a small town, and I just liked looking cool. And I was always into fashion and culture, and how that was, you could define that. You could be anybody you want, not that I wear outlandish clothes or anything like that, but I like being able, I've always been fascinated by that. So hair was just a part of that. And I just, my mom told me that, the music thing, I had 2 kids, 3 and 1 years old. I'm struggling. I literally have had over 200 jobs in my life. I would just leave at lunch. I would quit. I would argue. I would forget to turn the fucking grill off. Like, I can't even tell you. I was just so absent-minded because I didn't care about anything, because it wasn't worth my time. Hair was renewable. It grew, and there's shapes, there's things, there's creativity. It makes people feel better. You get to talk to them. I just had a knack for it, and I just started cutting, and could do a pretty good job even without any training, because it's really, if you think about it, if you just use your brain for a second, short, long, stand up, lay down, slick it back, grow it, you know what I mean? A bob is a straight line, you could figure it out. Okay, now there's all these skills to make it look better and more refined and grow in well and all that stuff, but I had a good natural knack for it. So she helped me she paid for my school, and then she paid herself back because when my grandma passed, I was on my inheritance was from some natural gas rights. She was one of 14 children in North Dakota, and they hit natural gas, kind of like oil up there.
Mm-hmm.
And so when she died, she had, in her will, went out to all the grandchildren. There's like 40 of us.
Yeah.
And so we all got this little chunk of change. My mom was the executor of the will. She's like, I'll put you through beauty school, but I'm going to pay myself back when your grandma passes. And she, at the time, you know, she only had a few years left, but, and God rest her soul, you know, that my mom did that. So my sisters, you know, obviously got a bigger little chunk of change than I did, but I've, you know, I've got paid back by that. It saved my life. You know, I found something I could do. I got paid well. I could be around people. I could be unique.
Yep.
I could be myself. I'd even, you know, I'd convinced the teachers in beauty school to let me take pictures of bands on the road to prove I was doing haircuts so I could still tour. I would bring home Polaroids of all these guys with mohawks and dreads and shit and bring them back. And I was just hosing. I was just bullshitting them the whole time. And they were, you know, some 60-year-old lady. She didn't care about, you know, the license, the part of school. It wasn't about skill. It was just getting your license. Yeah. So I had to learn all that, all the procedures and stuff. But, you know, they knew I was going to go on, and I didn't have any other chances. I was 31. I was like, this is it, you know, or 29. And that was it. You know, this is my last chance. My mom wasn't going to help me again. I needed something. And I wanted to work in a salon because color and cut and women's hair was a lot more expensive. And I just wanted to go where the money was. And for me, beauty on a woman means so much more. It's so much harder to achieve than making a man feel good. Like, you know, a men's cut's nice. They feel handsome, cool. It's more like for the wedding, or they just like to look sharp. Women, it's an emotional thing. And beauty and soft and like classic styles, and not just like pink and purple and crazy hair, but really pretty, really natural hair. That's almost harder to achieve. And that challenge became a huge part of my existence. And, you know, I lost my hair when I was about 27, 28. So for me, it's a really precious resource. I don't like over coloring it. I don't like leaving the bleach on too long. I won't do a service if I think it's going to harm the hair. And in order to get hair like yours, you got to take it right to the brink, dude, you know, to get it white. You know, I'm sure your scalp's been on fire. Your mom's like, dude, we can't do it again. It's going to fall out. And you're like, that's right. All right, it's close enough. You know, put some toner on there. We're good. Now I can do that, you know, but most of my services are very more natural. I do a lot of men's cuts. I do a lot of businessmen that like the same thing, and I'm quick, and they can schedule with me. They don't have to wait like at a barbershop or something. And, you know, and we have good conversations. I have people of all shapes and sizes, but the 70% of my clientele are men, and they're always ballers, dude, just like big money guys that don't have time. I start at 7 a.m. and they book their appointment. They come in, they come out. They don't like waiting around. They don't have a time. And it's the same thing every time. They can count that the service is good. I'm not going to be late. You know, I'm not going to move salons 100 times. I could just stay real consistent with them, and I charge them for it, and I get paid well. So, you know, I make a lot of money in an hour because I'm quick and I'm effective. And that's how I built my business. You know, I'll do like 18 to 20 clients in a day, or my wife, who does colors mostly, does like 4 or 5. Yeah. She still makes more money than I do because she pretty much just does women and colors.
Do you open a new salon by Golden One?
True Salon, TRU.
TRU. I'm
True.doco on Instagram.
True.doco on Instagram. I'll plug all of that on here. And your band, go ahead and plug that away as well.
It's called Chrome Rose. We're all on all the social media sites. We're also you know, Apple iTunes, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Spotify, of course. Just go check us out.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're on there. Just download it, stream it for free. I don't care. Just listen, and, you know, we're always playing. So let me know.
Jake, thank you so much for coming on. And of course, I want you back on because your life is, we only scratched the surface, as I said. But I appreciate you spending time with me. And for everyone else, thanks for listening. Don't forget, subscribe, follow, illuminate the bell on my YouTube channel, Phumblepodcast. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, the whole 9. This has been episode 23. Thanks for listening and watching. I'll catch you on the next one.